Sure. We can walk together.
That sounds good.
Snow blew in thin sheets against the riverside tower windows as the video cut in the middle of Erin Caldwell's pitch. The first sentence of the room's calm vanished into the feed. A reporter's edited clip naming Marcus Hale and footage of a charity chick being redirected. Erin heard someone shout, then glass rattled under a chorus of phones. She felt betrayal, sharp and immediate, a raw heat under her ribs that forced her fingers to the leather of her portfolio. She had spent months shaping Marcus' campaign. Now the campaign collapsed live and everyone in the glass-walled conference room watched her fall with it. Erin shoved her chair back. Her voice came clipped. "This is not what we presented." Her words tried to hold the meeting together. Her hands trembled enough that she set the portfolio down with a hard slap. People in the room leaned forward or stepped back. The client, Marcus Hale, did not rise to his feet. He avoided her eyes. The projector looped word to a stop, and there was a single, ugly silence. Within 3 sentences, the immediate stakes were clear. Erin could lose her job and her years of reputation if the board decided she had knowingly mislead them. She had to act. She motioned for Lena Park-Lena, pull the press contacts. Now Lena's fingers flew across her phone. On it, Erin. Ivy got the streams outside the panes. The river moved thick and grey. Inside, voices sharpened to accusation. Erin had built her career on straight answers. She trusted documents, timestamps, and interviews. She also owned a stubborn rule. Protect the vulnerable people in every campaign. That principle shaped how she spoke now. "Marcus, answer the allegation directly," she said. "You owe the donors." Marcus cut her off. "Erin, not in front of my partners." He looked annoyed, not contrite. He glared at the projector and then at the executives. "This is overblown. We can handle it." His calm read as control, and control made the board look for someone to blame. An executive raised a hand who approved the footage. Someone asked. Another voice, "Did Per verify the chain?" The questions were blunt, quick. Erin met each one with documents, email timestamps, and a printed copy of the script. Her throat tightened. Her jaw clenched. She heard a low buzz of phones in pockets. A younger associate whispered, "Erin, the clip already has 100,000 views." Erin did not flinch outwardly. She reached for the next action instead. They did not get through the pitch. Reporters' screens filled the building's public feed. The lobby downstairs would be chaos in minutes. Erin Marcus to hold interviews until she cleared the file. Marcus no, he wanted spin, she wanted truth. The disagreement pulled a line between them that felt personal. Erin recognized a second emotion shift, doubt. She doubted Marcus's judgment, and for the first time that afternoon, she doubted a campaign she had spent months shaping. By the time Erin cut the meeting, the building lobby was flooded. People pushed toward the glass doors, their phones raised. A cluster of reporters had already set up under the tower's sculpture. Snow began to smear on the plaza. Erin pushed through with Lena at her shoulder. Cameras pivoted toward her like hungry heads. One reporter shouted, "Mies." "Caldwell, did you know?" Another called, "Was this staged?" Erin kept her stride and answered in short sentences, "We are verifying the facts." "I will speak when we have them." Her voice was steady, but the carousel of questions burned her like cold metal. A man cut through the press. He wore a charcoal overcoat, hands in gloves, and moved with the sort of careful pace people gave to someone used to being noticed. He arrived at the center of the pushing bodies, and his presence changed the rhythm. Erin noticed the tilt of his chin before she registered his face. Adrian Vale's coat was neat, his posture controlled. He did not speak at first. He looked toward Erin and then toward the cameras, and reporters parted as if drawn back by his name. Erin's doubt shifted again, this time into suspicion. She watched Adrian step up, reach into his inside pocket, and hand an aide a note. He spoke in 2 sentences. "I'm Adrian Vale. I can help stabilize this. Give me 10 minutes in the private conference room." His tone was flat. He used the client's name less like an accusation and more like an admission. Marcus opened his mouth, half angry, half relieved. Lena squeezed Erin's arm. Erin allowed herself 3 seconds to measure him. Adrian Vale's reputation was a public thing, a private sector billionaire with a steady, guarded control and resources that solved problems quickly. Her private rule, do not accept help that compromises integrity, pulled tight. Adrian's offer implied leverage. Her first emotion shift, betrayal, pushed her to protect herself. Her second shift, doubt, made her suspicious of any easy rescue. Her third movement, however, was practical. She needed a pause to stop the news bleeding. Erin led the small group into a private boardroom on the tower's executive level. The room smelled of citrus cleaning oil and coffee. Snow hit the windows in small, nervous drifts. Adrian wasted no time. He unfolded a small stack of documents across the table and let sunlight catch gold edges on the pages. "These are the chain of custody notes you asked for," he said. "And these correspondences show a redirection of funds." He slid the paper toward Marcus. Marcus's face drained the color from his cheeks. Erin read quickly. The documents named specific accounts, transfer confirmations, and a single anonymous email that had flagged the irregularity. She felt a fresh spike of betrayal. Parts of the campaign had been built on an intentional lie. Her hands went cold. She saw Marcus' mouth move, saying, "Mistake." Accounting error. Erin looked up. "Marcus, who signed that transfer?" "Marcus, not me. It passed through 2 third parties." He sounded stranded. Lena, who had been on a call with outside counsel, said, "If the documents are what Adrian says, we have a legal opening. If not, our reputation is ruined in hours." A fourth emotion emerged for Erin: pressure. She paced once and then stopped, hands on the conference table. We either own the mistake or we bury it. I want to bury it." Her voice narrowed to a flat line of principle. Adrian's small nod was the only outward sign of approval. Vivian Crow arrived that night like a second winter. She moved through the war room with a designer coat and a sharper smile. "Erin, Vivian, you always choose drama over discretion." Vivian's voice landed like glass. "If you accept Adrian's hands-on fix, you will be tied to his interests." Erin answered short, "Vivian, this isn't about alliances. It's about facts." Vivian leaned forward. "Facts can be shaped, Erin. We both know that." The exchange sparked a public tension in the room. Loyalty versus autonomy. The debate became rapid. Voices overlapped. 3 quick lines. "Vivian, you re in too deep." Cut loose. Erin and Vivian traded 5 sentences that made everyone in the room reflexively choose sides. Outside, social feeds spun forward. An anonymous account posted a story suggesting Erin had been Adrian's plant from the start. Mentions multiplied. Clients called. Messages on Lena's phone filled the war room's soft hum. "Lena, they're re-asking if we're coordinating." Marcus' partners are distancing. Erin's chest tightened. She breathed shallowly and clenched her jaw. The second required emotion shift. Suspicion to fear hummed under her skin. She decided to go public with the truth, rather than let rumor decide her fate. The next morning, the city council hearing was scheduled as an emergency session, because the charity at the center of the story had public funds tied to municipal permits. Erin stood behind a lectern under bright lights and microphones. Camera lenses pointed like curious eyes. She felt a physical tightening at the base of her skull. The room was full of faces, including Marcus and Vivian S., and a bank of live stream monitors along the back wall. She reminded herself of concrete facts. The transfer timestamps, the email headers, the names that matched Adrian's documents. When Erin spoke, she did not perform. "My name is Erin Caldwell. I am the campaign director for Marcus Hale. We found the discrepancy and reported it." Her sentences were short. She read precise numbers and dates. Then she did something that risked everything. She named Adrian and explained his role as the source of the evidence. "Vale provided documents that revealed the diversion," she said. Marcus bristled. Vivian's mouth tightened. The council chair cut in. "Why wasn't this discovered earlier?" he asked. Erin answered, We were working with the information given to us. When new, verifiable documents arrived, we acted. The exchange turned the hearing into the chapter's peak. Public reckoning. Camera shutters clicked. Marcus' partners shifted in their chairs. A counselor demanded immediate accounting. Erin felt every head in the room measure her. This was the climax. The plate of stakes balanced precariously on her words. Marcus rose. He spoke in short sentences, his tone alternately defensive and clipped. "Erin, you missiled us," he said. Erin did not step back. "Marcus, you knew donations went through a side account," she answered. Their back and forth became rapid and sharp. The room buzzed with accusations. Vivian interjected, offering to oversee a private audit if Erin accepted a public correction phrase to protect the agency. Erin faced a moral choice. Accept a tempered version that would keep clients but blur truth, or press for full transparency that could cost her clients and contracts. Erin chose transparency. She handed a printed folder to the council's clerk and spoke a single, precise instruction: publish the documents. Let the city audit them. Lena's eyes were wet but clear. A dryness presence in the gallery was small but unmistakable. He sat back, hands folded, watching Erin choose the harder path. The council chair announced a pause to verify the materials. In the waiting hush, Erin felt the last of the earlier emotions shift into a steadier resolve born of action. Outside the hearing, reporters swarmed again. But this time the story framed the audit and Marcus' apparent complicity. Social feeds turned into debates, but the specific documents Erin had released made the allegations concrete. Vivian called to say she would file a formal complaint against Erin's methods. Marcus texted she had betrayed him. Adrian texted a short sentence: "You did the right thing." It read impersonal and true. Erin's phone buzzed with both support and threats. Clients hesitated. Her agency's CEO scheduled an emergency meeting. Erin's hands were steady when she folded her coat, but inside she catalogued the costs. Potential lost accounts, phone calls from donors, reputational punctures. She had traded safety for truth, and she stood amid the fallout. Lena squeezed her hand and said, "You stood for something, Erin." Erin answered, "We stood for the facts." "That's all I can promise." The exchange felt like a small, honest settlement. 2 days later they met in a small diner near the Riverwalk. The diner smelled of cold coffee and bleach. Sunlight hit the tabletop in a thin brightness. Adrian joined them at a corner booth. He removed his glove and set a folded page on the table. A faint scar along his jaw caught the light. Erin noticed it, and something in her tightness loosened for a moment. Lena sat opposite, still on edge but calmer. Adrian's voice was quiet across the vinyl. "I've informed my counsel to help within limits," he said. "You did well yesterday." Erin touched the red silk scarf at her throat, an anchor she had kept since the hearing. Marcus did not come. Vivian had filed a challenge. The ultimatum around Erin's career remained. Adrian slid a small, plain envelope toward her. "No strings," he said. "This is to cover immediate client fallout while your agency recovers." Erin held the envelope and felt the weight of agency and the weight of influence at once. Her earlier suspicion flared briefly. She tested Adrian with a single question: "What's in it?" Adrian's reply was 2 short sentences: "Funds for temporary staffing." A statement of cooperation. "No lined contracts with me." He kept it clean. She considered refusal. She also watched Lena's tired face. Erin closed her fingers around the envelope and folded the scarf once more. She felt an inward shift toward careful empathy. She began to read Adrian not as a problem to resist, but as a man who had quietly altered the shape of their day. She stood, tugged her scarf straight, and said, "I'll accept the help, on one condition." Adrian waited. "You will not be in our press strategy." "We run our own correctness." Adrian nodded, agreed. They both said names as if placing stakes. Erin, Adrian, Lena, Vivian, Marcus. Each name had a role and a consequence. The diner window fogged as someone opened the door, and a gust of cold sent a flake of snow onto the sill. Erin folded the red scarf into her palm, felt the fabric's silk fibers against her skin, and slid the envelope into her portfolio. She did not make promises beyond what she could keep. Get us the audit and I will handle the clients." Adrian stood, put his glove back on, and offered a single line. "I'll watch the horizon." Erin let herself accept that as a practical reassurance, not a romantic line. She smiled once, small and dry. They left the diner with separate steps. Erin walked out onto the riverwalk, the sound of the river low under the snow, and she felt the state's final shift between humiliation and partial vindication. Her phone chimed, a supportive email from a long-time client appeared. Marcus's name floated in a dozen stories. Vivian's teeth showed in an unread smiling text. Erin rolled her shoulders, folded the scarf into an inner pocket, and began to walk back toward the agency. She had chosen truth and the cost was immediate. She had Adrian's envelope, Linus loyalty, and a public audit underway. At the agency door she paused, slid her hand into her coat, and felt the scarred leather of her portfolio. She breathed, steadied, and opened the door. A new call from the council clerk waited. They needed one more signature. Erin stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Emotion root, betrayal, emotion shifts. Betrayal, doubt, suspicion, fear, resolve, pressure, empathy, measured acceptance. The projector blinked and died in the middle of Erin Caldwell's sentence. Journalists at the far table stood as if pulled by a magnet. A phone on the conference table buzzed twice and then erupted with a live feed. An edited clip naming Marcus Hale and footage of a charity chick being redirected. Erin felt suspicion harden behind her ribs and pushed her chair back so fast the legs skidded on tile. She cut her own line of argument and stepped forward. "Stop the feed," she ordered, voice flat, and the room obeyed. Reporters formed a ring around the glass walls. A producer on speakerphone demanded comment. Jonah Ortiz, Erin's senior account lead, mouthed her name from behind a stack of press releases. Erin's hands trembled once as she opened her portfolio. Suspicion drove her first move. Close ranks, control facts, protect the client. She set the worn leather portfolio on the table like a small shield. "Erin, Jonah, they got Leela Park on a live turn around. She has sources." His voice scraped between urgency and calculation. Erin nodded and reached for the firm's crisis packet. She sketched decisions on the back of a business card with a finger. Her jaw tightened. The central problem was immediate and concrete. A charity scandal now linked to a name that endangered multiple careers. She would not let that slide. Phones glinted through the panes. One reporter held a tablet with the clip on loop. Erin moved closer and pointed at the image. "Who edited this?" She asked, "Who put Marcus and that chick together?" The room answered with murmur and a single name. Unclear, the word landed like a weight. Her suspicion shifted into indignation. She slammed a palm on the table. "Jonah, where is Marcus Hale's statement?" Erin demanded, "We release a line now, clarify the timeline, and pull every asset that ties to her charity until we verify the ledger." Jonah slid a tablet toward her. "Marcus won't sign anything without counsel, Erin. Leela says funds were redirected. She has a receipt." He tapped the screen. "Look." Erin saw the image of a cancelled chick. The headline lit the room with accusation. They retreated to a smaller office. Erin shut the door, breathing cold air that smelled faintly of printer toner and coffee. She paced. Her fingers kept finding the thin silver wristwatch at her left wrist. Suspicion had pushed her into immediate containment, but indignation had pulled at her voice. She spoke quickly. "If I let Adrian Vale or anyone else step in without oversight, we lose control. If I refuse every hand, we risk lives and jobs. What do you want me to do, Jonah?" He leaned in, palms flat on the table. "Take the meeting in the lobby. Jonah, hear him out. If he offers resources, we can use them under terms. We can demand audit access. We can keep the client's voice central." Erin's mouth tightened. "Adrian Vale," she repeated. She had seen him once before in the building foyer weeks earlier, a silhouette of tailored charcoal and a watch like a small machine. The memory from that morning in Chapter 1, her pitch cut off by the reporter's clip, flashed with a new angle. She his name aloud and felt doubt prick her. They moved through the marble lobby where a man in a coat waited, hands folded. He spoke with a measured baritone and requested privacy. Erin recognized the quiet control in his posture immediately. Adrian Vale's presence rearranged the room's gravity. He offered immediate resources and suggested leverage over key evidence. He nothing crude or loud. He only said, "I can help you control the narrative." Erin watched his fingers steeple and noticed the faint vertical scar along his left jawline. Emotion shifted again inside her. Suspicion had made her defensive. Indignation made her oppose the presumed cover-ups. Now doubt crept in. Could his help truly clear her client's name? Or would it hand power to a man who had every reason to bury his own connections? She kept her voice steady. Help on what terms? She asked, "Who are you asking us to protect?" Adrian answered calmly, "I am asking you to accept a targeted audit and a public statement anchored to one person. I will offer access to my foundation's records. In exchange, I ask you to let me verify the sequence of transactions privately first." His gaze landed on Erin and held, "I have reasons to clear this, Mies." Caldwell, he it without flourish. He did not offer pity. He offered a concrete exchange. Erin's chest tightened. She saw the ledger image again in her mind, and the reporter's edited clip. The morning's interruption from the previous chapter sat heavy. A public smear that had begun in an online edit. She remembered the exact moment the feed went live, how the first line of her pitch vanished into static. That memory was canonical. It shaped her suspicion now. She could almost hear the clear, edged click of the producer's finger before the stream cut. Erin folded her arms and asked for conditions. "We demand audit access to your foundation's accounts," she said. "We will handle the public statement. Your team cannot dictate language. And your counsel signs a non-disclosure about any unrelated internal inquiries." Adrian's nod was almost imperceptible. "Agreed," he said. "On the condition that I can verify a separate transaction which ties back to Marcus Hale. If I clear him, I clear your client. If not, I will accept the consequences publicly." Jonah glanced at Erin. "This could work," he said. Back in the cramped war room that afternoon, Erin and Jonah debated every clause. Every sentence they considered revealed a different cost. If we accept him, we open ourselves to his control. Erin, if we refuse, Marcus may file an injunction, and the firm will take the hit. Jonah matched her with facts. The feeds are already trending at 50,000 views. Leela's piece is echoing on social. We have 24 hours before the narrative ossifies. Erin felt her decision compress into a tight, physical choice. Suspicion had forced her to negotiate, but now she had to balance moral clarity with professional survival. Leela Park, the reporter, sent an email late that night from an account marked Press. She wrote, "I found a tie between the charity and Vale Foundation." Erin read it at her kitchen counter, the laptop glow painting her fingers pale. The email carried a scanned memo showing a wire that linked the charity in that clip to Adrian's corporate foundation. The memo's header was formal and dated months before. Erin's throat closed. She had thought Adrian's offer would be rescue. The new document shifted her view. Her indignation flashed back as if lit by a match. She called Jonah. "Leela's got a memo. It links Adrian's foundation to the charity." Jonah's silence on the line lasted a beat longer than acceptable. Then he said, "We need to know whether this is oversight or a cover-up. Find out who signed it." And when Erin typed a response to Leela and then froze. She realized she had two urgent choices. Accept Adrian's quid pro quo and shelter her client now, or dig into a truth that might tear apart more names. She set her coffee down and breathed. At 6 p.m., she accepted Adrian's invitation to his winter boardroom. The space behind the glass had rimlit city views and a long table that gleamed. Snow dusted the window ledge. Adrian's legal counsel sat 2 chairs down and placed a folder on the table. Erin opened it. Adrian admitted a complicated, personal connection to the scandal. He described a redirected fund meant for a program he had once supported. His words came measured. "I redirected the payment. he said. "I thought it covered a debt I carried from an earlier contract. I did not disclose the transaction because I believed it resolved a liability." Erin watched his jaw work and saw the faint scar there. She watched him remove a custom gold cufflink. Erin's voice stayed steady but precise. "You redirected funds and did not disclose it. You expect our firm to shape a public message that makes you the focal point of clearing this." Adrian did not look away. "Yes," he said, "I will take the statement. I will provide the audit. I will sign the public confession if it clears your client." Jonna leaned forward. "And if the audit shows something else?" He wanted the limit spelled out. Adrian closed his fingers on the cufflink. "Then I accept legal and reputational consequences. I will not deflect. I will make this my issue to fix." His acceptance of personal cost altered something in the room. Erin felt an emotion shift again. Doubt had become a sharper tool. She had feared being co-opted. Adrian's admission suggested a potential for honesty, but only if the audit and public confession were real and complete. Her hands tightened around the folder. She for immediate terms in writing, "You sign the corrective statement now. We submit a preliminary press line acknowledging a mistaken transfer while we verify. You give us audit access within 12 hours. You waive confidentiality on matters tied to this transfer." Adrian hesitated a fraction. "I will sign," he said. "But I ask that your firm allow me to manage the release window to minimize harm to the charities involved." Erin looked at Jonna. Jonna's voice cut dry. "We do not let anyone manage our language, Adrian. Not if we want to keep credibility. Not if we want to salvage careers." He listed the firm's reputation metrics without ceremony. Adrian listened, and then, in a short exchange that felt like a negotiation in code, he agreed to Erin's language terms and asked only for a controlled circulation among key outlets for 3 hours before full release. Erin accepted. That control would give them time to prepare the clients and to frame the narrative honestly. Outside, Marcus Hale filed a sudden legal notice that landed on the firm's inbox like exported ice. He accused Erin's firm of manipulating coverage. The thread that trailed through social tagged the firm as complicit. The pressure spiked. Erin read the notice and felt the weight of public accusation. Her decision now mattered in measurable ways. She called the client's board and explained the plan. CO voices on the other end of the line asked pointed questions. She answered with data and steps. Every time she spoke, she measured how the words would land in feeds and on airwaves. That evening at the charity gala rooftop, the world narrowed to precise edges. Cameras blinked like mechanical insects. Erin stood at the microphone with a prepared line in her hand and the press pack at her feet. The audience was a ring of suited faces and winter coats. Leela Park watched from the side with a reporter's hunger. Marcus Hale sat with a lawyer at the periphery, jaw set. Erin cleared her throat and walked past the prepared statement. Her chest felt raw and open. "Stop the script," she said into the mic. For a second she heard nothing but the thump of a camera shutter. Then she said, "This firm will not hide facts to shield a narrative. We will correct the record now." Jonna's face was a study of stone at her side. Adrian's jaw tightened across the room. He rose. Adrian stepped into the light and lifted his hand. He spoke without ceremony. "I redirected the funds. I did not disclose it. I will accept responsibility and make the records public." His admission was clear and precise. The cameras leaned forward. Leela wrote furiously. Marcus's lawyer stood. The rooftop wind salted the glaze on the city below. Erin's body reacted with a concrete set of motions. Fists unclenching, a swallowed breath, a step back to let Adrian face the cameras. The scandal's immediate shape shifted in front of everyone's eyes. The crowd tilted between outrage and relief. Juridical wheels would now grind toward clarity rather than rumor. Yet Erin felt something skim her, a new vulnerability that came from making that choice out loud. After the cameras left, the rooftop thinned. Snow clung to Adrian's shoulders. They walked to an empty bench. Erin sat and folded her hands into her lap. Adrian unbuttoned his coat and sat with ceremonial space between them. "You didn't have to do that, Erin," he said. "You could have let me handle it and remain private." Her reply was measured. "I had to be honest with the client," she said. "I had to stop the narrative from spinning alone. People will lose jobs if we keep hiding the ledger. We needed a truthful anchor." Adrian nodded, jaw working once. He produced a small envelope and set it on the bench between them. "There is more in here that explains why I did what I did. Read it when you can. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for it to be true." He placed a hand briefly on the envelope, as if to stake it with his presence. Erin slid a finger under the flap and felt paper. She looked at the city. Her suspicion had moved through indignation and doubt and landed on something that felt like wary clarity. She lifted the envelope, then closed her hand around it and placed it inside her coat. "I will read it," she said. "Tomorrow." In daylight, Adrian rose and smoothed the cuff of his sleeve. The rooftop lights caught the gold accent on his cufflink. They remained on the bench as cameras shuttered their last frames. Jonah appeared at the rooftop edge, breath forming a small cloud. Marcus Notice has a clause we can contest. We can delay the legal clock by filing for discovery." Erin looked at him, and then at Adrian. The night offered specific work to do: statements to coordinate, audits to open, counsel to engage. The emotional aftertaste was a careful, practical unease. A new event arrived before the night closed. A name tag folded into a printed question under the Gallus program table. Erin opened it with a fingertip and found a short note. "A different ledger entry than we expected. Check page 3 of the audit packet." Her pulse accelerated. She slid the program back into the pile and felt the envelope in her coat like a second heartbeat. It was a precise, tangible sting, less dramatic than the rooftop confession, but it redirected the next move. She stood, snow crunching under her boots. "Jonah," she said, "start discovery now. Call our counsel. Get Marcus Notice and file the counter." Jonah already had his phone out on it, he said. "Leela will run a second piece in the morning if we coordinate with her. Adrian will need full access at 9 m. Adrian inclined his head. 9 m, he said. His tone offered a guarded agreement. Erin walked away from the bench with the envelope still tucked against her chest. She had resolved the chapter's immediate conflict. The staged narrative would end with Adrian's public acceptance and audit access. The scandal had not vanished, but the war over truth had a path forward. She felt the last emotion shift take shape. Doubt had settled into practical resolve, and beneath it a cautious curiosity about Adrian's envelope. As they descended the gala stair, the city lights glared and the snow continued. Cameras had cleared. "Back inside!" Someone shouted a name. "Miss Caldwell!" A legal clerk handed Erin a thin manila packet. She took it, fingers sharp with cold. The packet contained Marcus Hale's motion for expedited discovery and a copy of a wire transfer that did not match the one Adrian had described. The two documents clashed in a way that promised further unraveling. Erin felt the thread pull at the edge of her certainty. She did not read the manila packet on the stairs. She placed it in her portfolio and felt the weight of decisions stacked like stones. She had made a public choice. She had accepted Adrian's admission and secured audit access. Yet the new packet demanded another move. Verify the second transfer now or risk being blindsided. Erin looked at Adrian across the stairwell. He watched her with tightly contained expression. "Tomorrow at 9, she said. "We start discovery. We bring Lila in under embargo. We do not let anyone spin alone." Adrian inclined his chin. Jonah's phone buzzed. "I'll get counsel on the line now." "Jonah, I'll draft the discovery response and flag page 3. Erin nodded once. She snapped her portfolio closed. They stepped into the wind and moved separate ways through the gala crowd. Erin's decision to break the prepared script had shifted the narrative outward and forced accountability into public view. The immediate conflict for the chapter, whether to accept external aid or keep the firm's independence, had been resolved in a way that protected the client while opening the door to further truth. The final beat was concrete. Discovery would begin at 9 a.m. Adrian's audit would be delivered, and a manila packet had arrived that contradicted a key ledger. Erin walked into the night with a plan and a new, precise set of tasks to execute. She did not fold into reflection. She set the envelope against her heart and kept walking. The chapter ended on that specific, actionable note. A legal packet in hand, a public confession made, and a morning deadline that would decide reputations. Emotion route. Suspicion, emotion shifts, suspicion, indignation, doubt, cautious clarity. Erin slammed the glass door open and shoved a printed screenshot across the helipad railing. Who doctored this? She demanded, voice carrying over the photographers clustered by the edge. Suspicion sat behind her words. She checked the clip's metadata with quick, practiced motions and felt suspicion harden her jaw as cameras swung toward the confrontation. Snow cut into the rim light, flakes striking the steel and red scarf at her throat. Within moments, she could see the stakes. Her reputation on the line, a live feed already rebroadcasting the doctored charity clip, and a choice that would either bury her or force someone powerful to stand with her. The rooftop filled with movement. Reporters murmured. Naomi Park moved at Erin's elbow, shoulders hunched against the wind, voice clipped. Erin, step back. Elena, please. Naomi, and her hand hovered over a legal pad as if the pad could shield them. Elena Ross, a board member, kept her phone pointed at a cluster of lenses and didn't hide her irritation. You disrupted the event, Elena. You dragged us into this. Her tone was precise. She named the clip, the timing, the worst possible interpretation. A cameraman angled his lens to catch Erin's face. The helipad light stung. Erin felt each flash like a physical prod. She had come here with a plan to demand answers, not to stage a spectacle. Her action was immediate and tangible. She tapped the screenshot a second time, traced the visible edit points with a fingernail, and pushed the paper toward anyone with an answer. This is edited, she said. It cuts from the charity handoff to another angle. Someone spliced 2 feeds. Who benefits from that? Her voice stayed level, but her hands jittered when she folded and refolded the sheet. Her suspicion pushed her forward. She could not afford to wait while cameras decided her fate. Adrian Vale watched from the terrace doorway, coat collar up against the snow. Erin could not see his thoughts, only his posture. Steady, controlled, an island of calm. He stepped closer and the cameras swung. For the first time since the projector died earlier in her presentation, a man with power intervened in the immediate work of saving her. Naomi mouthed a quick thanks toward Adrian and then returned to her role, hands already dialing a contact, Adrian, Erin, and the name landed like a test. He tilted his chin, as he always did in meetings, and said, Erin, tell me exactly what you found. He kept his sentence small and direct. She named timestamps, edit slices, and the difference in color grading between the 2 frames. She watched him measure the words, watch the cameras, and then watch Elena. Naomi handed a legal brief to a young associate and whispered instructions. A reporter elbowed forward. Reporter Carter held up a phone and said, Ms. Caldwell, a viewer sent this earlier. They say it came from inside your agency. The accusation cut like a file. Erin's breathing shortened. She felt betrayal like cold air under her collar and flinched. She turned to Naomi. Naomi, is there a leak? Naomi's mouth pressed thin. She answered without lifting her eyes. We were hacked yesterday during the pitch rehearsal. I thought it was Marcus' team fishing for a reaction. Her voice contained a small, bitter crack. The conversation split the rooftop into angles of trust and doubt. Erin moved toward Elena, needing a concrete exchange rather than accusation. Elena, who leaked the legal notice. Who gave them those documents? Elena's hand tightened around her phone. We received a sealed notice from Marcus Hale's counsel this afternoon. It alleges defamation and demands removal of the feed. Are you saying you did not authorize that push? She did not look at Erin when she spoke the name Marcus Hale. Hearing it in public felt like being shoved. The rooftop hummed with the electricity of old business rivalries. An assistant hustled toward the service door and shouted that a clip had been forwarded to a dozen political blogs. Cameras pivoted, and the live feed spiked. Someone in the press cluster murmured a line about corruption. Another voice suggested Erin had staged a stunt to garner sympathy. Naomi snapped into damage control mode, voice efficient. Elena, we can file a countersuit for tampering. We need a safe room. We need to pull the feed and source the original raw files. Naomi's choices pressed into Erin's mouth like a foreign shape. Naomi offered legal maneuvers. Erin wanted evidence. Adrian stepped between Erin and the edge where the cameras gathered. I will publicly vouch for Erin and demand an investigation. The statement dropped a weight into the chaos. Erin's chest loosened for a second, relief surfacing as a physical sensation, a breath that found space. But he added immediately, however, I will have to disclose a personal connection to the people named in that clip. His tone stayed flat. He named no details. Naomi blinked. Elena's expression shifted, registering the trade-off. Erin realized the rescue came at a price. Exposure of private ties Adrian had kept hidden. Suspicion mutated into calculation. She had to decide whether to accept help that called for her to stand beside someone with a past he would not share lightly. Erin's fingers curled around the paper. What are you asking me to risk? She asked. Her voice had an edge. She pictured the way the press would pass any linkage, the wording that would be used in headlines. Naomi rubbed her thumb against the legal pad and said, if Adrian discloses, it could change the focus. It could show the clip was manipulated by a third party. But it will draw his name into the spotlight. For the first time, Erin heard Naomi argue beyond strategy. Naomi's tone carried a personal risk assessment. A new sound cut through, the low hum of a phone playing a shaky clip. Reporter Carter held it up like an offering. I got this from an anonymous tipster. It shows the other camera angle unedited. The overlay shows a hand with a distinctive bracelet near the console. Watch. This isn't Tieran's team. He tapped the video and the feed projected a minute of raw, handheld footage onto the rooftop's portable screen. Everyone leaned in. The raw video showed a boardroom chair, a trembling hand, and a wrist with a narrow silver band. The band glinted in the light. It was not a designer bracelet, more like an ordinary token. Erin recognized the pattern of someone scrambling to cover a camera cable. She felt an immediate shift from suspicion to alarm. That bracelet, Elena started. The sound of the clip rewrote several assumptions at once. Naomi crouched beside Erin to watch the phone close. Up, the angle matches security footage we couldn't access earlier. Naomi. Someone recorded from inside and then sent a shorter, edited version to the network that suggests an internal agent. The rooftop hummed with the realization that this was not a simple smear, but a deliberate frame job. Erin's pulse quickened. She felt fear arc into focused anger. Adrian's voice came low over the claimer. If the raw footage is authentic, then someone inside arranged the narrative. Who benefits from isolating Erin? Who would gain by redirecting a charity check? He didn't give answers. He questions that moved the investigation forward. Erin watched his jaw, a faint vertical scar catching the light when he shifted his head. She stayed in her own body. Her breath, the scrape of snow against her boots. The way her fingers tightened into the paper. Someone at the press edge shouted the name Marcus Hale. The word sounded like a trigger. Reporters clustered. Cameras leaned in for the mention. Marcus Hale had been named in the earlier edited clip. His influence now loomed between the lines. Erin remembered the projector cutting out in her pitch, the same edited footage that had rerouted a donation. She forced herself to speak in short sentences, direct and audible. We will get raw server logs. We will subpoena the feeds. Naomi, start with internal user access reports for the last 72 hours. Naomi nodded and barked orders into a headset, then handed Erin a business card with a firm's forensic contact. The rooftop sank into a tighter focus. A board member whispered that Marcus' lawyer had sent a terse message hinting at a broader conspiracy. Elena folded her arms and said, "If a smear helps Marcus' agenda, he'll capitalize. But we also can't expose our board to litigation unnecessarily." Elena's words cut like a scalpel. Erin felt the pressure of the company's calculations pressing on her like cold steel. Naomi's gaze flicked from Erin to Adrian. "We need someone to claim ownership of this story on our side. Erin, will you go on record with what we've verified so far?" "Naomi." Erin swallowed. Her options narrowed into a tangible line. Speak now and risk immediate fallout, or let Adrian's offer stand and accept his condition. Her suspicion of privilege and past betrayals tensed her spine. She thought of the charity recipient in the footage. She thought of the reputation she had built defending clients without capitulation. The decision had to be visible. She took a breath and said, "I'll speak, but only if Adrian's disclosure is limited to what's necessary to prove the edit without drawing personal attacks at the people named." She the words as an attempt at control. Her voice had a brittle steadiness. Adrian hesitated. He stepped forward under the cameras and said, "I will disclose an association with one of the individuals named, nothing more. I will not tolerate defamatory targeting of anyone. I will show the raw footage and call for an internal investigation into editing sources." His cadence was even. He kept the statement short. For a moment, the rooftop recalibrated. Cameras capturing the man's promise, Naomi jotting notes, Elena calculating legal exposure. Erin felt a truth shift inside her, relief tempered by unease. The situation snapped again when reporter Carter's phone buzzed. He flinched, then held up a new message. "A source just sent me a short audio file from inside the agency's servers. It's a voice assigning instructions. Make the handoff look messy. Cut out the part with the check redirect. Make it seem like miscount." Carter played a 30-second clip. The voice was muffled but clear enough to identify an accent Naomi recognized from a phone directory. Naomi made a noise that was half a curse and half a command. That's internal coordination language. That recording changes everything. Erin felt the tension ratchet to a higher plane. The rooftop crackled with possibility that the smear had orchestrators. Elena's brow folded. "If that audio is authentic, we have evidence of a coordinated attempt to mislead. That legal notice was likely a pressure play to freeze us. Who benefits most from the charitable misdirection? Marcus Hale has means, but so do others with stakes at that meeting." The board theory flung more names into the air. Erin's mind raced through the faces in the conference room that day, the client list on her portfolio, the small resentments and big gains tied to a charity pivot. She thought of Marcus. She thought of a rival firm she had clashed with months earlier. Outside the cluster of press, a shadow moved near the service door. A junior board member, pale and breathing fast, stepped forward. "I intercepted an email chain this morning on my inbox showing a draft of the edited clip and a note. Push-it presentation. It came from an internal address that forwards to Marcus Counsel. His name was Ben, and his voice shook." Erin recognized him. A peripheral figure at committees, often invisible until paperwork required a signature. Ben's disclosure created an immediate shift. A concrete linkage that pointed to someone within the company's orbit sending material outward. Naomi took control, voice precise. "Ben, give me that chain." Privately. Now Ben offered his phone with trembling fingers, and Naomi scanned the messages. The rooftop dialogue accelerated into a sequence of short bursts. "Ben, how did you get that?" Elena demanded. "I saw it on a shared inbox this morning." Ben answered. "I assumed it was a draft that shouldn't go out. I flagged it to legal and then it disappeared." "Who flagged it?" "Adrian, no one formally." "Ben, I only forwarded it to myself for safekeeping." The rapid exchange read like a switchboard of suspicion. Erin's chest tightened as she watched the interplay. Each name or misstep changed the geometry of accusation. Then Adrian did something Erin hadn't expected. He stepped to the portable screen and demanded the rooftop mic. I will play the raw footage now and instruct the network to halt the edited feed while our teams compare servers. The cameras leaned forward. He announced in a way that took the story out of the hands of gossip. Erin watched him, but she kept her focus on the evidence and the decisions she needed to make next. Naomi moved beside her and whispered, "If this clears you publicly, the board will still want a post-mortem. Be prepared for internal audits." Erin nodded, thinking in practical steps. A Dryness statement triggered a flurry. Tech people hustled cables and cued the raw clip. Reporter Carter transmitted the audio file to his editor. Elena called for legal counsel to assemble. The rooftop became a machine humming to disentangle truth from manipulation. Erin found herself in the middle of the machine, her hands cold on the railing. She felt a shift from fear to clarity. The evidence suggested a deliberate setup. The clarity gave her a new energy. She moved to ask questions about motive and method rather than just damage control. When the raw footage played, the differences were audible. The cuts the edited clip had used were not present. The hand with the silver band was shown lingering by a control panel, fingers pausing near a switch. Erin watched the moment several times. She recognized the motion. Not accidental fidgeting, but an intentional manipulation of the feed. Naomi pointed at a timestamp. That's when the network overlay switched. She said, "We need the facilities access logs for that minute." Her voice was rapid. Erin felt the adrenaline shift toward focus. She began to list names aloud, to triangulate who had access to both the boardroom console and external forwarding. The rooftop confrontation reached its peak when Adrian interrupted the live feed with an unplanned statement. He did not ask permission. He walked to the microphone and said, "The footage being circulated is edited. I have personal ties to one person named in the clip, and I accept responsibility for my connection, but I will not allow misrepresentation to ruin a career. We demand a full forensic audit and will pursue whoever edited that clip." His voice held a firmness that forced the cameras to register his words. Then, in a single, brief sentence that stunned the cluster of press, he added, "My connection to the case is a past business partnership with the firm used by Marcus Hale's counsel." The admission reframed the narrative. It made clear he would risk reputation to expose the edit. Erin heard the rooftop tilt under that revelation. She watched faces. Elena's composure cracked a degree. Naomi exhaled sharply and then tightened her jaw. Ben's breath hitched. The cameras flashed fast. Erin's response was visceral and immediate. She stepped toward Adrian and said, "Thank you. Now let's trace access logs and find who forwarded the edited piece." Her voice held gratitude and a demand. The gratitude came out as a present moment action, not a speech. She refused to let the spotlight make her sentimental. Reporter Carter's phone buzzed again. He held up a message with a new attachment. A terse email exchange between an account named Internal Ops and an outside counsel, with a forwarding address that traced back to Marcus Hale's legal team. The message included a line, "Make sure the redirect looks like an error." The sentence landed like a verdict. Erin felt a second shift of emotion. Anger moved from personal to targeted. Her hands went still. She felt the muscles in her jaw clamp down, and she spoke with a narrow, steady tone. "Who authorized Internal Ops access?" She addressed Naomi. Naomi's fingers moved over her phone, and then she said, "It lists an admin token assigned to an account under Elena Ross, board assistant. We'll need the internal admin logs." The exchange forced Elena and her staff into the frame. Elena's face went white. She stepped back and said, "I do not authorize hacks. My assistant handles schedules, not server tokens." Ben interjected, "Elena, I copied you on the chain this morning. Are you saying someone used your assistant's access without your knowledge?" Elena's eyes darted toward the service door, and she swallowed. For the second time in the night, betrayal turned inward and contagious. Erin watched Elena's composure fracture as she dialed a number with hands that trembled slightly. The rooftop spun into legal and technical triage. Naomi convened a small cluster of lawyers over the service door, Adrian ordered his team to freeze external dissemination, and Alina's assistant was escorted to a nearby private area for questioning. Erin stayed near the railing, hands gripping the paper, breath steady. The crisis that had threatened her career in the first 5 minutes now had a path toward resolution. But resolution required more than evidence. It required public clarity and a willingness to expose motives. Erin had to choose how far she would let Adrian's disclosure go and whether she would participate in naming names. She stepped into the service corridor away from the microphones with Adrian and Nami close behind. The cameras were still on the edge, but the corridor offered a pocket of privacy. Nami, Erin, whatever you decide to say, keep it short and factual. Use the audio and the raw clip. Do not speculate about Marcus until we have his counsel's statement. Naomi's voice was tight with professional focus. Erin nodded and felt her emotions narrow into a plan. Prove the edit, force an audit, and let the evidence speak. Adrian put a hand on the folder Naomi offered and said, I'll authorize legal resources and open my channels for the audit. I want to let this stand. Erin met his gaze for a second. She watched his profile in the corridor light. She could not know his intent or his private fear. All she had were his actions. She chose to accept the help in the moment. Her decision was concrete. She signed a short statement that morning's events had been manipulated and asked the company to publish both clips side by side. Naomi arranged the release with a terse legal phrasing. Back outside on the helipad, the press reacted to the dual clip release. The edited version's narrative collapsed under comparison. Conversations unfolded fast. Analysts debated motives, boardrooms began internal calls, and Marcus' influence dimmed as the story reframed around tampering. The immediate public crisis deflated. Erin felt exhaustion flood in as adrenaline ebbed, but the exhaustion was mixed with a fragile, practical relief. The raw evidence shifted public perception enough to slow the defamation threat and give Naomi time to lodge an official complaint. In the aftermath, the small team retreated to a service corridor. Naomi arranged for Alina's assistant to be placed on leave pending investigation and forwarded the admin logs to a forensic team. Ben stayed close, pale but resolute, and offered a written statement about how he had saved the original chain. Reporter Carter lingered, asking pointed questions that Erin answered sparingly. Every interaction was clipped. Even gratitude came out in discreet, useful exchanges. Erin took a moment alone on a deserted bench near the business district after the rooftop emptied. The bench sat under a sodium street lamp. Snowflakes gathered on the planks. She found her red scarf caught on a slat where she had left it earlier, and she paused to free it. Her hands were numb. The scarf smelled faintly of her coffee. The scarf's silk slid warm through her fingers. She folded it, tested the fabric, and then smoothed it over her knees. The action was small and concrete, an organizing gesture after a chaotic night. It helped steady her. Nami joined her and said, We weathered the feed. We'll pursue the audit and get the admin logs. Marcus Council will respond with a defense. But public perception has shifted. Naomi's voice was pragmatic. Erin nodded, thinking of how many threads still needed tying. The assistant's access, the forwarding address, the motive behind the edit. She had cleared the immediate smear, but trust within the company had splintered. Alina's error, whether complicit or negligent, would require more than a statement. Erin felt the last shift of emotion in that night. From raw fear to methodical resolve, she stood and placed the folded scarf into her portfolio. Before she left, her phone vibrated. A short message from a contact at the network read, We have paused further airings pending your confirmation. Thank you. Erin glanced at the name Elena had typed into her phone earlier, and then at Naomi. Get the logs delivered to our council by morning, she said. Naomi acknowledged and already had a list forming in her head. Their exchange had no melodrama. It had decisions and movement. The night would yield an inquiry and new internal reckonings. They walked down the deserted sidewalk together. Erin kept the scarf folded in her hand like a ledger of the night's events. tangible, folded, and immediate. Elena's assistant would be questioned. Ben would be protected as a whistleblower for the moment. Marcus' counsel would posture, then respond. Adrian had exposed a personal tie to force a public correction. Erin did not know if that exposure would cost him, but she had been honest in return. She had accepted help while insisting on limits. At the corner, Naomi paused and said, "Erin, people will ask how much you owe Adrian for stepping in." "You owe him nothing. You did the work. He chose to make his name a part of this rescue." Erin folded the scarf again and slid it back into her portfolio. She felt tired, but not broken. She had faced the smear, found raw evidence, and forced a public alignment that required everyone to account for access and motives. A new message arrived on Elena's phone as they neared the company's glass tower. An internal server alert flagged unusual VPN activity from an administrative account. Elena's face tightened. She turned to Erin and Naomi and said, "We need to secure all tokens and prepare for internal testimony." The line closed the chapter with a concrete next step. The discovery demanded an immediate administrative response. Erin met Elena's gaze and said, "Do it now." "Don't wait until morning." Elena nodded and dialed a number with hands that stopped shaking. Erin walked away from the bench under the street lamp and into the pale morning. The snow had softened the city's edges. She kept her shoulders squared and the scarf in her portfolio. The press would follow up. Board meetings would convene. Lawyers would pass the audio. For now, she had turned a smear into an investigation and forced names into the open. She had chosen truth over safety, accepted help with a cost, and pressed for evidence rather than rumor. The night's revelations would change several reputations, but they also created work. Restoring trust, repairing internal protocols, and deciding who would be held accountable. She did not end the night with answers to all questions. Instead, she left with a series of concrete tasks and a fragile line of allies. Naomi walked beside her, offering logistical plans. Ben would hand over the email chain. Elena would secure admin tokens. Adrian's disclosure had altered the landscape, and Erin had accepted both the help and its consequences. She tucked the scarf inside her portfolio, a neat red fold against the dark leather, and stepped into the street where the first city buses glided by. The chapter closed on a clear, specific action. Erin pulled her phone out, dialed the forensic contact Naomi had given her, and said, "Start the server audit now." No pauses, no delays. The line clicked as someone answered, and she began to give the factual details that would tie the night together. She did not promise an easy ending. She promised records, logs, testimony, and the slow work of accountability. The red scarf in her bag felt like a signal of a night that had altered trajectories. The last visual was exact. She folded the scarf and slid it into her portfolio, then crossed the street under a wet sodium light while Elena's phone buzzed with a new alert that would demand fresh action.